Welcome to our special coverage of Matthew Aftermath. I'm meteorologist Todd Borick.
And I'm meteorologist Allison Chinchar. It is the first full day after Matthew's demise, and here's what we know about its on.
Hard is Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. Our own Mark Elliott made it there late yesterday. And Mark, how extensive is the damage there on Hilton Head Island? And it's just sad to think, too, that it's not done yet. We still have the beautiful weather there in terms of the sunshine, but the devastation continues, and that is a long couple of days ahead. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being out there. We'll check in a little bit later on in the show, and boy, it's just going to be a rough stretch of days. National Guard and first responders carrying out more than
is a delayed effect that we're going to have. So here is a look at the recap. This is starting on Friday, where we can kind of show you as the water came up what it was actually going to do. And we'll put it into motion so you can see on Friday it was really more of an impact for, say, Florida into South Carolina. But then it slowly started to, as it moves into motion, goes up towards North Carolina and then eventually up towards Virginia as well. Once we get it to kind of get going there, it'll again show you just how slowly some of this rain ended up going through, and some of these spots had trailing. So you have a lot of the areas that were hit over and over again, and a lot of them with the yellows and the oranges and the reds that you see, they're indicating not just light rain, but they had very heavy rain coming down for hours at a time. So again, we are going forward looking at the potential for the rain that we just got. But keep in mind, some of these areas already were very saturated. North Carolina, for example, some of the east coast of North Carolina had an 8-inch surplus in the month of September. So that ground was already saturated before the rain from Matthew even got there. In fact, take a look at North Myrtle Beach. Normally only about 7.5 inches. We're more than double that thanks to the extra rain. These are all of our river gauges in flood stage. You want to focus your attention on the purple ones. Those are the ones in major flood stage. And unfortunately for some of those, it's going to take days for them to finally come back down, which is why we have the flood warnings still in effect, Todd, for at least a couple more days before we finally get that water to come back down.
And those still cut off by rivers on the rise after Matthew's record rain.
Perspectives, it's very interesting in terms of the amount of water. So let's take a look at the history of this particular storm, because as we push this forward, notice it kind of slides in between a lot of the Bahama Islands, then skirts just along the coast before finally making landfall in the United States in South Carolina, and then continues its track up towards Canada and Nova Scotia as of right now. Here is a look at some of the top rain reports that we had in Savannah, one of the Army bases there. They picked up 17.5 inches of rain. In North Carolina, again, 15 inches, 14 inches, 14 inches. Again, just some incredible amounts of rain. But even those, even some of the smaller numbers per se, like the ones in the 9s that we had in Suffolk, Virginia, Virginia Beach, even 9 inches, again, can cause an incredible amount of damage. Again, you have to understand, too, a lot of these places were already at a surplus for the month of September for rain. So that ground was already saturated. They didn't need this extra rain. Looking at September 1st, again, the blue bar showing what they've had versus the average. North Myrtle Beach, 27.8 inches. They would average only 7.5 by this point already. And again, knowing that we had some of the flood gauges, we still have many, Todd, that are at major stage and will likely take several more days before they come back down.
Absolutely heartbreaking images from the devastation Matthew brought, and looks like we still have to deal with this for the next couple of days. I'm meteorologist Todd Borick.
And I'm meteorologist Allison Chinchar. Millions still struggling with the impacts of all of that rain and the wind. Charlotte, North Carolina also had some pretty significant amounts of water, and that has to flow somewhere. And so that water ends up in some of those rivers as well. Here's a look at Matthew's past track. Again, as we go into Friday, you can kind of see it kind of skirted along Jacksonville. Now, we want to talk about how close was this track. So this was where the Hurricane Center figured it would be about 2 a.m. Friday and 2 p.m. on Friday. Now, the error was off by just a little bit. Actually, in all terms, really not that far. This is where it was at 2 a.m. Friday, and this is where it was 2 p.m. Friday. So in terms of north-south, it was actually very close. It just ended up being a little bit farther east than where they originally anticipated. And I want to say this, 26-mile difference. In terms of hurricane forecasting, that's actually really good to be within 26 miles of where you thought it was. The difference was, since it was 26 miles off the coast, it made a huge difference for the folks, say, around Fort Lauderdale into Miami. And same thing farther up to the north. It was about 48 miles difference, and that made a huge difference for a lot of the folks, say, around the Cape Canaveral area, and then as you go farther north into, say, Jacksonville as well. Here's a look on average, though. This is the average track errors that we normally get from 2001 to 2015. And notice the 1 day is about 50 miles. So again, when we talked about 26 miles, that's actually not that bad. It's just in this particular instance, it made a huge difference in terms of land impacts for those folks along the east coast of Florida. Now, starting Wednesday, this particular storm, again, kind of flowed pretty far south. In fact, it was the southernmost Category 5 in the